Vilma led an extensive team of architects. She worked at a prestigious company and, thanks to her dedication and effort, quickly climbed positions. Now, she was universally recognized as one of the best architects in the company, besides holding renown in the business sphere. Vilma also enjoyed a substantial income. Her salary was among the highest in the company. However, a void still lingered in her life. She yearned for a grand love. Unfortunately, she didn't have time to fall in love, which kept her distant from relationships. Vilma's father was a mogul in the real estate sector. Her mother was a dedicated housewife who supported her husband's professional endeavors. Even though they desired a grandchild, they didn't pressure their daughter in that regard. The company where Vilma worked expanded its horizons, leading her on a series of trips with the team. During these journeys, she met Manuel, who held a lower position and only had a high school education. His role was to assist engineers and architects. Between them, an intense connection emerged based on chemistry and depth. Manuel stood out for his kindness, words, and friendly gestures, such as small gifts. As they grew closer, love blossomed between them, and the relationship solidified. Several of Vilma's friends recommended ending the relationship, pointing out the discrepancy in their positions. "Vilma, you have no idea what you're doing. You're a renowned architect, while he plays a bureaucratic role in the company." Despite the beautiful feelings between you two, this disparity could cause problems in the future. Your income is nearly 10 times higher than his. Men often feel uncomfortable with successful women. Furthermore, he is your subordinate, which could undermine his self-esteem at work. Vilma listened attentively to her friend's advice but chose not to care. She believed that time would reveal her boyfriend's true nature. Over the months, it became clear that her friends were mistaken. Manuel proved to be a confident man, never showing discomfort with their differing positions. Additionally, their family backgrounds were distinct. While Vilma came from a wealthy family, Manuel came from a middle-class background. He often faced financial difficulties, but that didn't hinder their relationship. Soon, they were considering marriage. However, before that, they needed to meet each other's families. Manuel had the opportunity to meet Vilma's family, and her parents were delighted with the young man. However, when Vilma met Manuel's family, not everything went as she had hoped. Before entering the house, Manuel said to Vilma, "My dear mother has a traditional mindset, and her opinions may not align with yours. I ask for your patience." It was important to understand her way of thinking. Vilma smiled and assured him that everything was fine. She was prepared to deal with whatever came. Manuel's mother welcomed her with a warm hug and informed them that lunch was ready, inviting them to sit down. A large table was filled with food, where the couple settled. Vilma sat down first, but soon his mother intervened. "Dear, please, get up. This place is reserved for the head of the household, where my husband will sit, and my son, as the second head of the household, will sit at the other end." A feeling of embarrassment struck Vilma, leading her to stand up to allow Manuel to sit down. When his mother wasn't looking, Manuel and Vilma exchanged glances and suppressed laughter, as if they were sharing an understanding that everything was fine. Lunch went smoothly. After the meal, while the men chatted in the living room, Vilma helped his mother set the table. His mother then asked, "My dear, I heard that my son proposed to you, and you accepted. I was so happy." Finally, my Manuel will get married. I can't wait to see my grandchildren running around the house." She continued, "And what about you, my dear? When do you plan to quit your job?" Vilma was surprised by the question. "Quit my job?" she asked, trying to understand the reason behind the question. "Yes, quit your job. A woman should dedicate herself exclusively when the children are born. The man is responsible for providing, while the woman takes care of the home. Do you agree?" Vilma was speechless. She wanted to have a good relationship with her future mother-in-law, but she was not willing to give up her job. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I'm not going to quit my job. I love what I do. Besides, I have a good salary," Vilma replied firmly, which prompted a shout of indignation from her mother-in-law. "So, it means you don't intend to dedicate yourself to household chores? What kind of mother will you be to my grandchildren and my son? Left at the mercy like stray dogs." Vilma didn't appreciate the tone adopted by her mother-in-law and felt offended by the words spoken. Manuel caught part of the heated conversation between them and went to the kitchen. He tried to calm his mother's nerves, but she was irreparably agitated. Vilma was also inflexible in her position. However, the idea of handing over their future child to be raised by someone else deeply affected a wound previously unknown. This was something she didn't want to experience. Manuel and Vilma left his mother's house, as the coexistence between Vilma and her mother-in-law was not going well. Manuel tried to have a loving conversation with his fiancée. "I'm sorry, my love, try to have a little more patience with her. I can tell her that you'll quit your job when we have our first child," Manuel suggested. "Do you think that's possible?" Vilma expressed her desire to have children, but she loved what she did and wanted to reconcile both. Vilma expressed her dilemma and tiredness. She knew she would be a great mother, but she wanted to reconcile her passion for work with motherhood. Manuel expressed the desire for their future child to be raised by herself, an incredible woman, and not by an unknown nanny. Despite these words, even without a definitive decision, Manuel informed his mother that he would leave his job only after the birth of their first child. The mother-in-law was not completely satisfied, but she found this idea better than Vilma's perspective. Never abandon your career and not dedicate yourself to the family. Tranquility reigned between the parties for a few months. However, close to the wedding date, differences in thinking resurfaced, generating a new conflict. The wedding ceremony convened so that each family would contribute with expensive gifts, such as designer bags, luxurious furniture, and even a Rolex watch for her son. Vilma found these criteria absurd and was not willing to yield. "Do you think you're superior to everyone just because you hold a higher position than my son?" the mother-in-law said. "You may be rich, but you're greedy. Even though you won't provide what my son deserves." Vilma was irritated and a hard-working provider of the household. "Including Manuel, and I need a place to live, so I consider it fair that the man's family plays the role of household provider." Vilma concluded her request with a gentle smile. "You're being lazy. Avida is asking for a house for me. It's obvious that not doing it is your family's responsibility to prove such a thing. My Manol already works hard, he deserves this. I'm confident that the bride's parents could perform such an act for the couple. He certainly isn't interested in having his daughter live anywhere." Vilma's patience ran out, and when she was about to get upset, her parents intervened, putting their words both agreeing on a residence. They, her parents, already contemplated the idea, knowing that the groom would not have the means for such an undertaking. In addition, they wished to avoid discord between the two. Vilma's mother tried to reassure her daughter. "Keep calm, my dear. Soon, you'll be married, and this woman will leave your lives." Tired of confrontations with her mother-in-law, Vilma yielded in hopes that everything would change after the marriage. The couple united, Manuel received several relevant gifts from Vilma's family, while he obtained some favors from Manuel's family. She understood that they were middle class, and this did not worry her. It was only the dictates of her mother-in-law that caused her discomfort. A few months later, Vilma became pregnant, and for the sake of her son, she chose to quit her job. This was not her aspiration, but Manuel and her mother-in-law's pressures compelled her to that decision. She gave birth to a beautiful and healthy girl. Now, Vilma became a dedicated housewife, devoted exclusively to her husband and daughter. Her times as an architect and leader were particularly distant. Unfortunately, her mother-in-law did not leave her alone even after the marriage. She visited their house only to complain. Vilma spent sleepless nights and still had to manage the household. It was more laborious than when she worked as an architect. Her mother-in-law visited and prophesied, "Vilma, what kind of food is this? And it's terrible. I can't believe my son should ingest this daily. This food wouldn't even serve the pigs. Learn to cook." Vilma was so exhausted that she lacked the strength to argue with her mother-in-law. But she didn't stop. "My God, this house is filthy. You should clean it immediately. When my mother comes to help me." The mother-in-law didn't appreciate such a response. "What do you mean your mother came here? It's your obligation to take care of the house. My Manuel works hard to support you. You must fulfill your role and stop being lazy. Also, your mother shouldn't be coming here. She should take care of her own house, not yours. After marriage, a woman should no longer depend on her parents. They shouldn't be coming here constantly. Also, make this baby stop crying. It's giving me a headache," said the mother-in-law. Vilma, irritated, didn't remain silent. "I won't cut ties with my parents, and this house is mine, not yours. So the marriage was mine, not yours." The mother-in-law couldn't believe what she heard. "How dare you speak to me like this, just because your parents entertain this house? You feel entitled to treat us this way. You're just worthless, incapable even of taking care of the house. If I knew you were like this, I would never have allowed my son to marry you. The house is dirty, this child won't stop crying, and my son has to eat this food that not even the pigs would tolerate." Vilma couldn't bear those words. She had been sleepless for a week, hadn't eaten, intended to, still had to deal with that. "You're viper, you're the worst kind. Get out of my house right now," coherent Vilma said to her mother-in-law, who, fearful, hurried away. At that moment, Vilma was aware that her actions had consequences, but her conscience was clear because she endured more than she could. Later, on the same day, Manuel returned home with his mother and father, and Vilma explained what happened. But soon her mother-in-law intervened. "You should separate. This woman isn't good for you, my son. You don't deserve to live with someone who treats you so badly." Vilma took her mother-in-law's words, but her smile disappeared when her husband started talking. "It's better for us to separate." "Vilma, I'm no longer enjoying this marriage," Manuel asserted. Vilma felt a mixture of anger and sadness. "Get out of here now and take this girl," planned the mother-in-law authoritatively. I won't leave, it was my parents who survived this house. You're the intruders here, Vilma replied. Unable to leave the house, as her parents were experiencing financial difficulties and her father's company was in crisis. Even risking losing the house to pay off debts, the mother-in-law continued to insist. It was a trio of pressures, her mother-in-law, her father-in-law, and her husband, all pushing Vilma out of the house. Finally, Vilma left. But before she declared that she would regain the house, her mother-in-law laughed, saying that she wouldn't succeed because the house was in Manuel's name. Feeling foolish for trusting something as vital as the house to her husband, Vilma had no choice but to return to her parents' house. The mother nearly fainted upon learning what happened to her daughter because the parents' house was on the verge of being sold to pay off debts. Time was a luxury Vilma didn't have. Without a job, without a husband, and with a young daughter, Vilma was at a crossroads. Her mother called her to the room and opened a small safe. Inside was a specific specification of money. Take it, my daughter. With this money you can rent an apartment and wait for better times. The gesture moved Vilma, who promised to repay as soon as she could. Meanwhile, Vilma's parents lost the house and were living in rented accommodation. Vilma now lived alone in a modest apartment, while her mother helped care for her granddaughter. One day, her father approached with a proposal. Daughter, I'm still recovering, but I would like us to work together. You're my daughter and an excellent professional. Vilma accepted, and father and daughter worked together to restore prosperity. Evidence showed that Manuel and his family expelled Vilma from the house. The judge ordered Manuel to leave the house so that Vilma could return. Her enraged mother-in-law hurled insults in the courthouse corridor. At that moment, Vilma's mother couldn't bear it and slapped the woman. Vilma was incredulous because her mother had always been calm and imposing. Vilma and her parents had a place to live. 2 years passed, and the family regained its former status, becoming even more prosperous than before. Vilma and her father now managed several companies, and she invested in real estate to ensure future income. Despite being young, Vilma couldn't consider retirement, but her passion for investing in properties didn't let her stop. One day, she was hired by the broker responsible for her various properties. A lady wanted to rent a luxury apartment for her recently married son. Upon arriving at the location, she spotted her ex-mother-in-law talking to the broker. After they left, Vilma moved and said, "Ma'am, this is a luxury apartment and we can't reduce the price any further. Furthermore, we can't accept a watch as payment, even if it's high-end." Even if it's a watch of great value, the mother-in-law noticed Vilma's presence and questioned her. "What are you doing here? Weren't you on the verge of bankruptcy and had to sue me to take my son's house?" Vilma calmly replied, "Actually, it's not me who wants to rent an apartment. Finding a watch that, by chance, I myself introduced to Manuel." With that, the mother-in-law was left speechless and tried to ignore Vilma. So, she turned to the broker and requested, "Please, show me another apartment. I don't want anything related to her. There must be another option available." The broker replied, "Certainly, ma'am. We have other options. However, if you want something that has no connection to Ms. Vilma, it's better to go to a location further away from here. Because we need to go far away. Why don't you show me another apartment in this building?" The broker explained, "This entire building, in fact, belongs to Ms. Vilma. Furthermore, most of the high-end apartments in this area are now under her ownership, of her companies and her family. The mother-in-law finally understood that Vilma was no longer in financial difficulties. In fact, she was richer than ever. Although she thought about stopping her, her pride was stronger. The mother-in-law simply left without saying anything else. On the same day, Manuel looked for Vilma and said, "Long time no see. Today, I missed you, but couldn't speak." Vilma heard his words and his shameless attitude, feeling sorry for her ex-husband's distress. "Weren't you engaged to another woman?" she said. "No, it was you whom I loved. This time, I didn't let my mother interfere in our relationship. Please, come back to me. I promise to make you happy and apologize every day." Vilma, in silence, and with a laugh, enraged Manuel, who exclaimed, "I'll sue you for your mother's slap." Vilma interrupted him, "If you want to file a lawsuit, we'll see who comes out victorious. Besides, I've also filed a lawsuit for the psychological suffering I endured. Furthermore, in case you've forgotten, you have a daughter and never paid child support. Would you like me to file a lawsuit to recover the 3 years of unpaid child support?" Manuel, fearing that Vilma would indeed take this step, hung up the phone and never contacted her again. Vilma took her daughter in her arms, now feeling calm, knowing that everyone who hurt her got what they deserved. This story reminds us of the importance of challenging social expectations when they are not aligned with our personal desires and values. It also emphasizes the need to respect the individuality and autonomy of each member of a relationship, regardless of their social or professional position. It's important to consider that parental influence is a natural part of our life journey, from childhood learning values and behaviors from them. Based on our own needs, desires, and values, if you liked this story, leave your opinion in the comments and, of course, leave your like and subscribe. Activate the notification bell to not miss any videos. A big hug and see you soon.